On today's episode of the Pathways to Wellbeing podcast, we are joined by the wonderful Jennifer Noble, who will help us dive deep into the fascinating topic of attachment styles and their profound impact on our relationships. Together, we will explore how these styles influence the dance of connection in our lives and what we can do to nurture healthier, more fulfilling relationships. Now, if you'd like to support Sacred You, please hit that subscribe button, give us a like, or check us out at www.sacredu, that's the letter U, .love for more valuable resources. May you enjoy the conversation and have an excellent day. Welcome to today's episode of Pathways to the Wellbeing podcast. And with me, we have the beautiful Jennifer Noble. Thank you for joining us, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me today, Sophia. I'm so excited.
So am I, and I'm really excited because we're talking about something that I want to go deep into it, because I truly believe in attachment styles and how they affect our relationships. And I love your title, do attachment styles determine the dance of our relationships? Well, I would say yes, but
Yes.
I'm going to ask you, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and let's get into the attachment styles.
Yeah, so attachment styles is my passion. It is my love. And I found out about them myself about 5 years ago when I was going through another painful breakup where I was just completely devastated. And through all of that, I came out on the other side and I decided to become a relationship coach and go back to school and start to get my degree in psychology and eventually my master's and my doctorate. And this whole thing just started exploding. And I started learning about how important attachment styles actually were and how much they affect our romantic relationships. And so that's just a little bit about me. I'm now remarried. I am incredibly happy. I'm in the happiest relationship I've ever been in. I'm just the happiest I've ever been in my life. I have a 13-year-old son who is just darling and also a lot of work. And without realizing it, all of this attachment stuff is helping me parent better as well. And so through learning all of this, I just really learned how important it is to be understanding our attachment styles.
Yes, and thank you. And isn't it wonderful and amazing how life brings us opportunities to learn and to really focus on what we're passionate about?
Yeah, and it's so hard to see that when you're in the thick of it, when you're in the pit and you can't get out. You don't see at the time how beneficial that pit actually was for you. But yeah, looking back now, that heartbreak, the divorce, and then the breakup, and then the pandemic, and everything going on ended up just being the perfect alignment I needed to just get my life together. And somehow I'm one of the statistics that didn't go the other direction. And instead, I did come out of it. I came out of the pit. I'm in a better light now, and it's just been fantastic.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Really, congratulations. And let me just take a moment just to really honor you, for being the beautiful you and bringing your passion to the world.
Thank you.
So let's talk about attachment and all the different styles. So what for you in your mind, what actually is attachment?
Yeah, so I'd love to start in case anyone's really listening and they're like, I've heard this kind of kicking around or I have no idea what this is. Attachment styles is based on the work of John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth back in like the 1950s to 70s. And so they developed this theory that showcases how we were brought up by our early caregivers, how it influences the way we are going to react to adults later on in life. And so this first started with Bowlby, and he started doing these experiments, started noticing, hey, sad kids had sad upbringings. Why is that? What's going on? And then Mary Ainsworth came in and she saw his work and was like, oh, let's do an experiment. And she did this experiment called the strange situation. If you ever get a chance to look it up, it's fantastic. And she put a bunch of kids in rooms with their parents and then had the parents walk away and then had them come back. And they started really developing this idea of, oh my goodness, the way we will act as adults is already forming in as early as under 3 years old. And why is that? Why is it forming that early? What's going on? And we're learning, and we're learning even more today, that this is all to do with the way that we are raised. Now, I know if you're out there and you're a parent right now, that feels overwhelming. Oh my gosh, I'm going to mess up my kid. But it's actually empowering when we look at this. So there are 4 main attachment styles. And we have secure attachment. That's the gold standard, or as I explain it as, because I like to talk about attachment styles as dances, because otherwise it can get quite confusing. People are like, I don't understand what's avoidant, what's anxious. And so secure attachment, I like to call it the smooth waltz. It's the epitome of what we want in a relationship. It's the joy, it's the happiness, the fulfillment, also the peace and the safety and the comfort. This is what we are searching for. This is what people want. But then we have the 3 insecure attachments, and those are avoidant, anxious, and disorganized. And I can go more into those if you'd like, but that's the basic overview of where it is. So we have 3 insecure, and we're all us 3 insecure folks out there are all trying to become secure.
And it's so true. It's so true, because we want, I do believe that security, or also certainty, is part of a human need.
Absolutely.
We want to be secure. We want to know what's happening in our lives. Right? We want that security. So thank you. Okay, so let's go into the other 3 attachment styles. So especially, I think, well, is there any attachment style that is the biggest in research?
I would say, so disorganized attachment tends to be the one that is actually least researched, and the one that has a bunch of different names. We can't seem to quite pin down what this is. You will also hear it talked about as a fearful avoidance, disorganized ambivalent. There's all these words because all these other researchers have come along and also been like, this is the interesting one. This is the big one that we can't quite pinpoint. We can't quite put our finger on what's going on there. And that's me. I have a disorganized attachment. I often say I am the poster child of disorganized attachment. And that is because disorganized folks, they grew up in incredibly toxic households. A lot of trauma in their life, and big T trauma. A lot of things going on, a lot of inconsistency. As you were talking about, that safety, that security, that consistency, that certainty, it's not there growing up. So they're left to believe that they have to take care of themselves, and that the only way to stay safe is either to be hyper vigilant around everyone around them, or to be a recluse and just stay alone because they can only rely on themselves. And so there's this constant push-pull happening inside of someone with a disorganized attachment, where they so deeply want that love and connection that we all want as humans. But as soon as they get it, they immediately push it away because it scares the living daylights out of them. And it's on a subconscious level. Like, they don't realize they're doing this. They just pick a partner and start dating him, and the next thing, he doesn't chew his food the way that she wants him to, or he doesn't give her enough the right kind of flower she wants, and so she pushes him away. He wasn't good enough for me, or I wasn't good enough for him. There's always these stories going on in our heads. And so I'd say disorganized is the most interesting, the one I think we could be doing more research on, but also the one we don't quite understand as much, versus avoidant and anxious. They're the most common. And the way I explain these is, anxious is, I call it the salsa of uncertainty. And if I like to have you just picture a dance where you're dancing with your partner and everything seems to be going really well, but you're so preoccupied with messing up that you're not enjoying the dance. And what happens, because you're so preoccupied, that if you even miss one step, the entire dance is ruined. And so you have to be perfect. The next thing, the entire dance has been ruined because of that fear going on. That's anxious attachment. There's a constant need to earn your worth with a partner. You never feel good enough. In most likely in childhood, you were raised to feel like, oh, I was only good if I got good grades, or if I cleaned my room properly, or if dad came home and I was the good girl, then I was safe and I was loved. And so that's what I do now. I'm the good girl in my relationships. I'm the perfect person. I'm the people pleaser. And so that's the salsa of uncertainty, or the anxious attachment.
That's a big one, isn't it? Being a people pleaser is huge in our world. We see it so much. And would you call these attachments like addictions? And if we can just go back into the disorganized things, like that would be, is it people who, no matter what they do, their whole area, their whole life is totally disorganized? And they may,
Yeah.
some people may be hoarding, but some people may just live in a messy space.
But it's interesting because even though with the word disorganized, it's coming more from a mental disorganization and less of an actual. You can be actually incredibly well put together and have a disorganized attachment because disorganized is coming more with your feelings and your thoughts and your beliefs are all disorganized. They're constantly going back and forth. They're swinging. That's why I call it the pendulum swing dance. They're constantly swinging between avoidant and anxious. You can't make up your mind. But most people with a disorganized attachment, actually, a lot of them will look like they really have their life together because they're trying to put on a front to everyone else that, hey, look, I'm okay. And then in the inside, they're struggling completely. And any attachment style can actually have any mental health disorder, which is what's really fascinating. Narcissistic personality disorder, borderline, bipolar, OCD, all of these things. Any single attachment style can have any single one of them. So it's almost this underlining concept that doesn't really have anything to do with the other ways our mental health is formed.
Okay, it's a very interesting way of looking at it. So thank you for explaining that, because I was thinking more in the physical terms, but really it's within.
It is. And that's why they use these words such as secure, which again is just more of a concept of saying you can handle struggles and come back from them. You can handle relationship conflict and feel safe. That's a secure. You feel secure no matter what's happening in your external situation. Whereas with anxious, you feel anxious when your external situation is disrupted. And then with avoidant, you start to avoid people. So that one I haven't mentioned yet, but this one I call the solo tango. And I like to really just imagine a tango is typically a dance of precision and it's a duet, right? It's really this beautiful dance and it has to be in sync and all of this stuff is going on. But someone who's dancing a tango, they just can't get trapped in with a partner. They think they can't do it with a partner, so they just want to do it on their own. But as a result, a lot of people also see avoidant folks as, oh, wow, these people are so detached from the world, like in a good way, in a, wow, nothing bothers them way. They look so poised and so graceful out there all the time. But inside, they're a disaster. Like inside, they're pushing everyone away at all times. They will oftentimes just do the slow burn where they just push you away and slowly push you away. And the interesting part of that is most people who, sorry, I'm trying to get my thought process together. Anxious and avoidant people attract each other. If you have someone with an avoidant attachment, they're going to be attracted to someone with an anxious attachment, vice versa, meaning they're also going to keep pushing each other to go even further away. An anxious partner will come closer to an avoidant and say, I need you. And the avoidant partner will run further away because they're needed. And so that's the dynamic that starts happening.
Yes, and it makes for a little bit of a dysfunctional relationship.
Yes.
So what do we do about it? What do we do as individuals? If I realize I'm a great avoider,
Yeah.
I don't like conflict, so I avoid it.
And here's the interesting part again. So we don't get bogged down on the words themselves, but avoidant is more about the emotional connection you're avoiding. If you're avoiding conflict, it might actually be coming from a people-pleasing mechanism, which is actually anxiously attached. Because if you're avoiding conflict to keep the connection, then you're actually more leaning into the anxious attachment. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
But it's why it's so good to have these conversations and that's why I really like to talk about them in terms of dances, because I think the words themselves can get quite confusing for people. And they're like, oh, okay, I'm this way because of this word. And no, it's technically talking more about how you handle vulnerability. And so how do we handle this? How do we heal these parts of ourselves so we can be more vulnerable? Because a secure person, someone dancing the smooth waltz, they're incredibly comfortable with their vulnerability. They're able to express what they need. They're able to hold to their boundaries. They're able to be okay upsetting people and understand that their life is not over if they do. Versus those of us with an insecure attachment, as you're saying, you avoid conflict because you fear what's going to happen on the other side. That's an insecure action. And the best way to start going about this is to start identifying your attachment wounds and your attachment needs. So I can get more into that if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Okay. So your attachment wounds are all of those kind of unkind words that just got thrown at you all the time as a kid. Oh, you're so annoying. Oh, would you just shut up? You're so sensitive. That's such a big one, right? Why are you so sensitive? What else am I supposed to be? Insensitive? Oh, you're so loud. You're so obnoxious. Get out of my way. You're always in the way. All of these types of words. They form neural pathways inside of our mind. So I'll get sciencey with you for a second because this is where my passion goes into, which is like the neurological side of it all. But as we're forming as children, even in infancy, and there's even studies now that are showing inside the womb of your mother or of your parent, then you are already forming the neural pathways that will dictate how you act and react in your adulthood. And that's because our neural pathways, they fire and they wire together. And so as things are happening, if dad's yelling at you and you hear the words like, shut up and get out of my way, your brain connects that with the sense of a feeling of fear. So your body kind of shuts down. You get really small. Maybe you run and hide in your room and you're crying. And this is because dad put you down. Now, when you are an adult in a romantic relationship and your partner snaps, and he didn't mean to because he has his own stuff going on, and he yells at you for some reason, you are now right back in that space as an 8-year-old little girl, scared and crying and running away from dad. Because your neural pathways have been firing and wiring together to reinforce that for however long it is you're alive now. So we have to go back and we have to figure out what those wounds are. What are those limited labels that are holding you back from really being who it is that you truly can be without all of these beliefs swirling on inside of your head?
It's a lot, doesn't it? It's like a rabbit hole.
Literally. Yeah, literally it is. And these neural pathways, the beautiful part of this is because of work from researchers and psychologists like Norman Doidge and loads of others, I can't think of their names right now, that have been learning about neuroplasticity, which is essentially the brain's way of being able to rewire itself. And because of this work, we've been learning, oh my gosh, we can change our attachment style. So we used to think, especially with Bowlby and Ainsworth, they were just like, this is your attachment style. Great. That's the whole point of this theory, is just to tell you what you are. And now what we're learning is, wait a second, we can shift this. We can change out of this. We can become secure. And that's the first part, is identifying those attachment wounds. What are those stories that you're telling yourself that are holding you back? Like you're not good enough. If your partner cheats on you and you believe it's because you weren't pretty enough, or you didn't pleasure him enough, or you didn't do the dishes, or you didn't cook him good enough food. Do you hear those stories? None of that's real. It's just ways that we hurt ourselves again. And that's because in childhood, somebody told you over and over again that you were not enough. And so you're just reliving that now. And so we go in and we do these kind of processes that we have, and we figure out a way to shift our attachment wounds and come out of those limited beliefs and have more encouraging beliefs about ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing. And what about other people? When you're with someone else in relationship and you may realize that they're showing signs of certain attachment styles, what can you do about that? How
Yeah, it's a great question. I think understanding your partner's attachment style can be incredibly helpful. And also, I want to be really mindful that there tends to be a habit out there where anxiously attached folks are so preoccupied with their external situation that they forget that the point of this work is to heal themselves. And instead, they start trying to heal their partner. So they can't, I get these questions a lot in my practice, which is just, okay, but he's doing this. And so what can I do so he doesn't do this anymore? And it's, oh, hold up. If we're thinking that way, if we're thinking about the actions that we take are going to impact or influence someone else, then we're setting ourselves up for failure. So it's incredibly important to be mindful of your partner's attachment style. But here's why. It's mainly so that way you don't take what they're doing personally. So if you have an anxious attachment and you're constantly worried and preoccupied about making your partner happy and making sure he loves you, and you need a lot of reassurance, and you can be quite clingy, or you're always on your texts and he hasn't texted me back yet. And when he's not texting you back, instead of thinking it's because he's not into you or he doesn't love you or you're not enough, Instead, maybe he's just has an avoidant attachment style. Maybe in his childhood, anytime he tried to talk to his parents or his mom or his dad about his feelings, he got put down and he got told to be quiet. And maybe he learned that he has to do all of this on his own and he's not comfortable being vulnerable yet with someone. And so by learning that, we can start to really see, oh, okay, I don't have to take that personally now. But I want to be really mindful here because I think this is really important. We can understand someone else, but still have our boundaries. So just because someone else is really upset and then they shut down and they stonewall us and they don't talk to us for 2 weeks, if we don't take it personally, that actually gives us the empowerment to go towards them and have a communication with them that says, hey, babes, it's been 2 weeks and I haven't heard from you. I really need to hear from you before moving on to anything else. And if they still don't get back to you, then we're going to have to start making those hard decisions where we have to say, maybe this isn't the right person for you then. And if you're anxiously attached and you're listening to that, that probably just elicited a response in your body. I can't leave. I can't lose my partner. And that is a part of the issue. That's why we need to get secure for ourselves first. And then the relationship follows suit.
Yeah, I totally get that. So again, thank you for sharing. What about other relationships? And what about friends and family or even work? I'm sure that the attachment styles impact those relationships as well.
Yes, great question. They absolutely impact all of the relationships in our lives. We just happen to see that romantic relationships in our brains, like when we're looking at the fMRIs, romantic relationships elicit the same response as a parental relationship. That's why they're so connected. We don't quite know why that is yet. Maybe that's something I'll do in my own research as I get my doctorate. We'll see, because it's fascinating to understand why that is. It's probably just that it's very passionate. It's very close. It's probably one of the closest relationships you truly have, which is that of your partner and that of your parents when you're younger. It's like the person you rely on. So that's a theory kind of kicking around. But even with your friendships and even with your coworkers and even with other family members, this attachment style stuff is coming out everywhere. And so if you find yourself being the type of person that shuts down really quickly in your friendships, that might be an indication, oh, maybe I'm a bit more avoidant with friends and maybe I'm a bit more anxious with romantic. So you can even sometimes it can feel a bit different depending on who you're with because it depends on the level of vulnerability that you're willing to put out there.
Yes, I understand that because again, we're with so many people. Depending on how we are is how we express ourselves with others.
Exactly. And if you feel a deep longing for someone, whether it be friend, family, romantic, it doesn't matter. But if you feel something really deeply, that means you are developing an attachment to them. And that means whatever attachment style it is you have is going to become more apparent the closer you get to this person. That's why in romantic relationships, if you're anxious, you'll probably get really anxious after a while. Whereas in friendships, you don't see them as often. So some people might be like, with my friends, I'm fine. I'm great. Yeah, sometimes I get a little bit mad when she doesn't text me back, but I get over it eventually. Yeah, that's because she's just your friend. You don't have to see her every day. She's not your romantic partner. You're not sharing a bed with her. It's not as attached as when it is a partner.
And these attachment styles too would have a very big impact or be affected by emotions as well.
Incredibly. And in fact, I would say it might be the other direction. Our attachment styles are impacting our emotions. And so this work is really through like cognitive behavioral therapy, but part of the work that I do with my clients is we go through our BTEA, which is our beliefs, our thoughts, our emotions, and then our actions. So our beliefs influence our thoughts, which influence our emotions, which influence eventually how we act or how we react. And those beliefs are going and stemming all the way back from that attachment, that is those attachment wounds that are happening. Now, if you had a really good childhood, and I don't even mean really good because you can still have bad things that have happened to you, not perfect childhood, but because you had consistent caregivers and you had someone in your life that was able to really give you that safety and security, then you grow up with a secure attachment. And then your beliefs are not held around the fact that you are ugly or you're annoying or you're a burden. Instead, they're like, oh, hey, I'm valuable. What I have to say is important. Oh, wow, I'm allowed to take up space. those are your beliefs. And so your thoughts are going to impact that, which then impact your emotions, which then eventually your actions, which is why you see people that can handle adversity and they have resilience and they have regulation of their emotions. This regulation they have is because their beliefs over here are positive. They're helping their entire personhood. I was trying to think of a different word, but like they're helping them out the entire way. So our attachments actually influence our emotions.
That makes total sense. So how does, if someone is searching for love, if someone's depending on other people for love, which you see so much in relationships or happiness, one day you wake up and I feel so loved, and the next day you don't love me anymore. Where does that go with the attachment styles?
That's really good. So you're asking, can you actually help ask that again for me? Because I'm not sure if I'm quite grasping it.
Okay, so if you've got a person who is seeking or needing, has a deep need for love, you're in a relationship, and one day it's, you make me feel so loved. I love you because of whatever. But then the next day it's, no, I don't feel loved anymore. Or it could be happiness.
Okay, that's beautiful. So there's a person out there and they desperately they want the love of someone. Okay, this is actually really beautiful because a part of what I do is even question that word. Then what does love mean to you? Because what does that even mean? Someone says, oh, he just can't love me the way I need to be loved. What does that even mean then? And so really just getting more clear on even what does that mean? What does it look like for you? Because love looks like something different for every single person. And so if you're someone out there and you're feeling really desperate for love, my first kind of red flag is potentially the concept of being desperate for it. Because you shouldn't be coming at it in a place of lack. You shouldn't be coming towards love with not having it in your heart of hearts for yourself or from anyone else. I often explain it like this. If you're asking for a glass of water from someone and it's perfectly normal, right? Hey, Sophia, can I have a glass of water? And if you're like, no, I'm really busy right now, Jen, I can't. Okay, no problem, because I have some water right here. It's fine. I know where else I can get water from. And I just had water 10 minutes ago. I'm okay. But thank you though. Instead, now imagine I haven't drank in 5 days. I don't know where else I'm going to get that water from. I have no way of getting it on my own. I don't know how. I've never been taught. I wouldn't even know where to begin. And I ask you now, Sophia, for a glass of water. And now you tell me no. How do you think I'm going to feel in that moment?
Yes, that's totally different.
Yeah, it's like devastation. It's almost like my entire safety as I know it as a human is now in question. And that's what's happening when we're going into relationships looking for love or connection or care or safety or security. And we're not getting it because we didn't get it for ourselves first. We're not meeting it for ourselves first. We're not allowing anyone else to meet it for us. And that comes into play with the attachment needs. That is the second biggest thing that we need to figure out in order to shift our attachment styles, is learning what our attachment needs are and learning to be okay with them and to accept them and to love them about ourselves and not to shame them, and just to really see, oh, I love this. I like hugs. I like emotional connection. I like playfulness. They're all great things to have.
They are, and especially when and this is the question that I do have, right? Because for me, it's so important to fulfill my own needs. I can love myself or experience that happiness or that peace or that joy or bliss within, then I'm not dependent on other people,
Yes.
right, to love me. But is that also an attachment style?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so if you had a pattern, let's say, because you mentioned before you avoid conflict. So let's say, for sake of argument, maybe you are avoidant. If I know you're avoidant and you're saying, I just depend on myself, that makes sense. That's what an avoidant does. An avoidant will only rely on themselves. So there's a balance here. We have to learn how to both love ourselves, how to get our needs met on our own, how to know where to get them met, and also learn how to ask for it. Learn how to receive it from other people, because it's also not fulfilling to do that all on your own. You can cook your own dinner, but like, how great does it feel to go out to a restaurant right? To just get that steak made and you're not cooking after, you're not cleaning up afterwards. You're not having to deal with the aftermath or the leftovers or anything like that. You don't have to deal with the steak splatters that happen on the back of the stove. We like going out to eat. We want to be able to do that. Imagine now if you thought, I can never go out to eat. I can only be safe if I cook for myself. Some people have to do that. They have food allergies, and it's not a nice way to live your life, but that's what's happening. With avoidance, they're coming at it from a place of fear, but so are anxious folks. They're holding on to a relationship. They think they love someone so much and so deeply that they're the ones loving in the relationship. Truly, the truth is they're just doing it to keep their partner. People pleasing is not for you. It's so the other person stays. It's still a fear. It's still a selfish act. It's just like any other insecure attachment style.
Absolutely. I see that a lot in others. And like I said, for me, I'm a very good avoider.
Yeah, yeah.
And very much one who is dependent on myself to fulfill. And I think
And
that came from childhood.
yeah, exactly. And you can almost see this idea too, where you're dependent on yourself almost has still a hint of that great job. There is good job being dependent on yourself. And that's what I want to be mindful of for avoidance. I myself lean pretty avoidant. I'm disorganized, but I lean avoidant often. And I like to be really mindful, especially of us women who are leaning avoidant, that we need to be able to put ourselves out there. We need to be able to be okay depending on someone else to give us something, that we don't have to do everything on our own. And that sometimes can be a hard thing to learn. So I think it's beautiful that you're open and vulnerable to share that, because it can help so many other people to see, oh, yeah, that sounds like me too.
Absolutely. I think from what you're talking about, the attachment styles, it's something that we all have in different things. But can I ask you, Jennifer, what are some of the obstacles, what are the challenges that people experience in overcoming their attachment styles or even being able to change them?
I think the hardest part is that this is still a new concept. And so there's not a lot of therapists out there that are really doing proper attachment work. There's some therapists, there's some of us coaches like myself out there that are really starting to do this, but finding someone to help you along with it can be quite difficult. That's why I have an entire collection of coaches, and we're all trained in the integrated attachment theory, which is this really beautiful concept. And it really teaches us how to bring all of these modalities together, basically, to start really shifting and healing our attachment style. But the other part too is you have to dig in to some things that are really hard to dig into. And that's why I don't recommend to do this alone completely. Really trying to go back into your childhood and see, oh, I'm okay with him yelling at me here because my brother used to yell at me every day over here, and I just took it because otherwise, like, he would hit me. Sure, big brother thing. And then in your mind, you're like, that's not a big deal. It's just my big brother. That's what big brothers do. They just hit their little sisters. And then you stop and you think to yourself, wait a second. If I had a daughter and her brother was hitting her, I would have never stood for that. I would never stand for that. I would never allow that to happen. So why did my parents allow that to happen to me? And then you start unlocking these anger and resentment that you didn't realize you were holding on to. And you're like, oh, I'm mad and I'm angry. Good. We want that. We need to shift out of those feelings and kind of work through them. And then it takes time, because that's the other part too, is I think a lot of people nowadays want quick fixes. They really just want to be able to go and sit in a therapy room for maybe a month and then be done with it. And this attachment style stuff, I mean, I've been at this for what, 5 some years now, and 4.5 years. And I still struggle sometimes. I still, and we'll joke about it in the house, especially with me and my husband now. And I'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. That was a super disorganized moment right there. I did not mean to snap at you, but I got really angry. Or I'll shut down if he makes me mad. And I still feel it there, even with all the work I've done, even with all of the reprogramming and the rewiring and just how kind I am and compassionate I am to myself now. And even still, sometimes I'm just like, yeah, he just annoys me so much. And it's okay. That's just normal life. That's just part of it. And so if we can really understand that, if we can just understand that it's going to be a process, that it's okay to take a while, and we're going to constantly be needing fix this in ways. It's like going to the gym. If we just go to the gym and lift weights for even 2 months, and then now we're feeling stronger, so we're great, we never have to do this ever again, what's going to happen? we're going to lose our muscle mass again, and we're going to lose our strength. So we have to be doing this every single day, to be honest. And I think that overwhelms a lot of people is the problem.
Yes, I can see that because there's so much else on, and it's like, when do I have time? And yes, we now live in a world where we want quick fixes for everything. We live in a processed, pre-packaged world, and that includes for ourselves. Let's take a pill rather than going to the source of whatever it is and fixing the source of
Yeah.
Yes, so
Yeah, I'm really big on root cause stuff. You really want to be able to figure out like, oh, okay, why do I have this attachment? Or like, how do I fix this attachment style? Quick, tell me now. And it's, when did it start? Where did it come from? Why is this happening? We have to start there. So yeah, I love that.
So how can we break the cycle? If you've got parents, and for people who's watching or listening to this podcast and they've got young children, how can parents who have attachment styles, right? How can we break the cycle? We can encourage our children or bring up our children that may not be affected by these attachment styles so much.
It's such a great question that I don't quite have the best answer for yet because I am still going through the thick of it with my own son who's 13. So I feel like I'm not quite well versed yet in the parenting thing. I haven't hit full teenage years to say, I know how to do this. That said, and I'm not a parenting coach, right? So I'm a relationship coach. I like to be really mindful about stuff like that. That said, I have managed to change my entire relationship with my son since learning about my attachment style. And that's because without realizing it, I was pushing things onto him and projecting things onto him and getting mad at him for the things that I couldn't do. All of the typical things parents will typically do. And through learning about my triggers, about my attachment wounds, learning what my attachment needs are, learning how to set boundaries and not be afraid of that, I've been able to now showcase that to my son. But the single most important thing, if you take away from anything, just you're going to mess up. You're going to screw up your kids. It's fine. Like we're all going to do it because we don't know what our children need. Maybe what works for one child doesn't work for another. Maybe what works for us doesn't work for them. And so you're going to mess them up. It's totally fine. The key here is, can you accept when they tell you what has happened? So if they get older, or even as a teenager, and they say something like, when you did this to me as a 5-year-old, that really hurt me. You have two options here. You can be like, after all I've done for you, are you kidding me? Oh, I guess I'm not a good enough mother then. Like you can throw it right back in their face and just reinforce that attachment style, that insecure attachment style in their mind that says, I can't trust the people who love me because when I share vulnerably how I'm feeling, they throw it right back in my face. You've just reinforced that to your child. Instead, you could say, wow, thank you for telling me that. Let's talk about this. Even now, if you're hearing that, feel the difference. If you were to go up to your own parent right now and you know they upset you as a child, like somewhere, well, even if you are secure, I don't care. Your parents upset you somewhere. And if you could go up to them and you could just say, this thing that you did when I was 14 and you told me I looked fat in my prom dress really affected me for a really long time and it hurt my feelings. And now hear your mom or your dad say, wow, thank you for telling me that. I'm so sorry that affected you for so long. What can we do now? And that's how you begin to start breaking the cycles and shifting out of these insecure attachment styles by just really being there and attuning with your child and listening to them and not taking it personally when they come at you. And that's the goal of all of this attachment stuff, is just learning to take everything that's happening around you less personally. It's not about you. It's about them. It always is.
Thank you. And personally, Jennifer, I think you would make a wonderful parenting coach.
Thanks. In 5 years, after I get him out of this house in one piece, we'll see.
All right. Now, speaking of coaching, of course, yes, you are a relationship coach and you can help couples and people to have more empowered relationships, not just with themselves, but with other people, because we are meant to live in this world with others. I have this saying, that we're not meant to be alone.
Yeah.
Really, we just have to learn to live and relate and connect with ourselves and with other people. And I think it would be a wonderful person to help people do that. So for anyone who is watching or listening, do click on the links below and reach out to Jennifer.
Yes, I would love that. Reach out to me at any time. I mainly work with women who are struggling in their relationships, or they've just had a breakup and they're just really trying to get back on track. That's mainly who I work with. But if you are looking, if you're out there, you need a couples coach, or you are a male and you're looking for help there, I know lots of other coaches in this world, and I'm happy to always give out any information that I possibly can. My biggest passion in life is to just get this information out to as many people as possible. And then for people to do with it what they will, because every person is going to find that healing journey on their own. That's why I love working with clients, both in a program and one-on-one, because all of these bog standard programs you can get out there where you can purchase and you can do it doesn't work for everyone. You have to figure out what works for you. Even within attachment styles, you have to figure out what works for you and your attachment style and your unique situations.
Yes, you do. So Jennifer, I have really loved this conversation, and I would really like to go deeper. So please come back, because I'm sure we could spend all day here. But before we wrap up this episode, is there any other question that I could have asked you?
There is a question that if you had asked, I would have answered, which is, what is something that someone could be doing right now after this podcast, after this takeaway? If they do nothing else with this work, what could they do to really make a shift in their lives and in their romantic relationships? And I would say the number one thing I have learned within attachment work is self-compassion. It's about reparenting yourself. So think about all of the ways in which you wished you were parented as a child. And then for the rest of this time now, I want you to try to talk to yourself that way. So when you drop something on the kitchen floor, instead of saying, Jen, you're such an idiot, why do you always drop stuff? That's not you. That's not your voice. That's an old parent. That's just someone else saying that to you. Instead, you'd be like, it's okay. It happens. Let's just pick it back up and we'll try better next time. And if it happens again next time, that's okay. And that's how we begin to really start shifting out of this.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And for everyone who is watching or listening, again, do take Jennifer's advice and be kind to yourself. You know, we are human. We do drop things. We do make mistakes, but we don't have to beat ourselves up. So like I said, Jennifer, thank you very, very much. It has been a real honor to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me on here, Sophia, to get to talk about this. And this was such a lovely conversation. I would love to come back.
If you've enjoyed today's conversation with Jennifer, please hit the subscribe button or even like the video. And don't forget to check us out, www.sacredu.love, for all our other resources that we would love to share with you. Have a beautiful day, and we will see you next time.